Okay, here we are. UFC 278, Usman versus Edwards for the welterweight title. And a very, very good card, especially when you compare it to the last UFC card, or pay-per-view card, I should say, which was obviously Nunes and Pena and Moreno, Kai Kara France. And the only fight after that worth talking about really was Derek Lewis. And even those two fights weren't that great. But this card's got quite a few, so I think this is definitely a good one to look out for. If you're looking at, obviously, the main event, it's great. But then you've got Paulo Costa versus Luke Rockhold in the co-main. You got Jose Aldo versus Merab Dvalishvili. You got some decent fights. The rest of the main card ain't that great. And on the prelims, nothing too much to shout about. No fights that I think, to me, jump out as much. So, as is the norm, I am going to just be talking about the 3 fights on the card. The main event, co-main, and the one just before. So, starting off then, we got Jose Aldo versus Merab Dvalishvili. Can never pronounce that name right. And this is a very good fight. Jose Aldo, I think he's ranked number 3 in the bantamweight division, having has had more than a massive resurgence. Obviously beat Pedro Munoz, then beat Rob Font before that, or after that, which was a great win. I actually thought Rob Font would beat him, but he did well. And then just before that, losing to Piotr Jan, but then beating Chito Vera, which was a great win. I've seen how good Chito has done. So, yeah, I think Aldo's done amazing to have this resurgence. But then when you look at the Merab, he has had his last fight was an absolute war against Marlon Moraes, where he took everything that Moraes gave him and came back and ultimately got the stoppage in the second round. His wrestling is fantastic. His cardio is a bit weird. His cardio, when he's grappling, is good, but on the feet, he tends to gas out a bit in the second round. And a bit of a dark horse in this division. Some fights, I feel like, where he got a bit unjustly done over in some situations. I think the Ricky Simon fight was an example of that. But yeah, he's a very dangerous player. Reminds me a little bit of Justin Gaethje. He looks a little bit like Justin Gaethje as well, to be fair. At times when he's swinging, he's going crazy like he was in the Moraes fight. But a very, very good fighter and a dark horse in this division. And I think it's a good matchup for the bantamweight division. I think if Aldo wins this, I think the next fight, obviously, for the belt will be Aljamain Sterling versus TJ Dillashaw. You've also got Piotr Jan and Sean O'Malley. And I think if Sean O'Malley gets to win, I think they'll give him the title shot. But if not one of those, I think, should Aldo win, I think he should get it. He's put on an incredible streak at bantamweight and an incredible comeback, like I said. So, yeah. But I think for Aldo, the key in this one, he has fantastic wrestling, Merab, but I feel like Aldo's takedown offense should be good. And Aldo, typically, a lot of Merab's best shots, like takedowns, are out in the open and not really against the fence. And that is typically when Aldo does his best work. So, if I'm Aldo, I'd think you just keep him on the outside, keep him at range. Again, not an unbelievably great striker, Merab. So, I think if you can just do essentially what you did to Chito Vera and just keep him at the end of your jab. He's a fantastic jab. He does brilliant ripping the body, and especially with a guy who has some issues with you taking him into a war in the second round. I think if you can just get at the body, rip those body shots that he's so good at, I could definitely see him. I think he'll definitely drop Merab in this fight. But I don't know if he'll stop him. I think for Merab, if he wants to get this done, he really needs to pressure Aldo. But problem is if he can just do this without getting beaten up, and his chin's fantastic, but also not really get hit flush, because you don't really want to be taking that risk against someone like Aldo who hits as hard as he can. And I think as well, you could try and force the pace with Aldo, but I can just see Merab tiring if that's the case. And Aldo tires and gasses, don't get it wrong, but he does it more in a 5-round fight. 3-round fights he's fine. So yeah, but for my prediction on this fight though, you might have told from what I was saying there, but I do think Jose Aldo will get this one done. I think it's an incredible fight, but yeah, I think Merab, like I said, is a very dangerous player in this division, but I think Aldo has enough. He has the experience, and I think he has a skill set to get this one done. So I'm going to say Jose Aldo gets this done via a unanimous decision. And then jumping into the co-main event, we have Luke Rockhold versus Paulo Costa. A very interesting fight in middleweight division. You got Luke Rockhold, who's not exactly had the best of times as of late. He actually hasn't fought Luke Rockhold since 2019, where he lost to Jan Blachowicz. So he's had a 3-year layoff. So this is a big step up. And for Paulo Costa, his last fight, he obviously lost to Marvin Vettori. Before that, losing to Adesanya. The only 2 losses he's had in his career, and had the whole thing with the weight. I would like to see how he makes the weight this time. And I don't know, it'll be interesting to see on the scales if he doesn't, again, look... I don't know, like Costa's always looked a bit very like a skeleton, not a skeleton, but his face looks really like sucked in when it comes to him weighing in, and I just think like he's just too big for this weight. But if he can make it, and he says he can make it, I don't think it's an issue. But yeah, for this fight, obviously with Paulo Costa, I think he has had a bit of a rough time of it. I think Paulo Costa is a very, very good fighter, a very good character as well on social media, on Twitter. He's very, what would be the word? Active, I'd say. He's quite funny, but he's also like always posting these weird little memes. So I think he's good. I like Paulo Costa, and I think he's a brilliant fighter to watch. He's really in a really boring fight. He always comes forward. He lets his hands go. He has fantastic kicks. The Adesanya fight, I think he just overthunk it and just didn't really... he couldn't really compete with Adesanya. I think it wasn't on the same level. But in the Vettori fight, it was a great fight, and Vettori did great mixing the wrestling. And I think with Costa, if you can get him tired, he's there for the taking, but it's just whether you can get into that point, whether you can survive the onslaught, because he's more of a volume striker, Costa, rather than... He almost is displayed sometimes as a one-hit, one-punch knockout guy, but he isn't that. He hasn't got power like a Yoel Romero does. He has more of a sort of... He throws a lot of combinations and eventually just beats you with the pressure. So, an interesting fight, though. I think for Luke Rockhold as well. He hasn't fought for a long time. He was doing all right against Blachowicz, but again, he wasn't anything spectacular. And Luke Rockhold could have been, I think, one of the greats, but I think his ego kind of got in the way, and I think in fighting against Michael Bisping, don't get it twisted, Bisping's a legend, but I think Rockhold is the better fighter of the two. But unfortunately, what you saw there was just not take your eye off the ball, and it happens to a lot of fighters, and it happened to Rockhold, and he's been knocked out so many times now, and yeah, I just honestly, I'm giving my prediction away. I just don't know how he could get this done. I mean, it's an interesting fight. I mean, Costa's a decent grappler, but the problem is that with Costa, I think he just tires very easily. And Rockhold's a very good wrestler as well. But on the feet, these two both have fantastic kicks. The kicking game will be interesting to see who implements it, because Rockhold has fantastic body kicks. He has his left kick to the body, his left high kick, everything through that left leg is very good. And for Costa, it's similar. Costa has a very nice little sneaky lead leg kick. So I think there's a lot of... both these guys are really good strikers and good kickboxers. But I think what it's going to come down to is how Rockhold holds up under Costa's pressure. Because I don't think Costa really has a bad chin. He's only ever been dropped once in his career. And that's when he got knocked out by Adesanya. Actually, I tell a lie. He got dropped against Yoel Romero as well. But that was a bit more of a flash knockdown than actually getting hurt. But yeah, I just think Costa hasn't really had somebody who puts it on and who's powerful like that. The only guy who ever did was, again, Romero, and he survived that pretty well. So it makes me think Rockhold's power, I don't think, will be that much for him. And yeah, I just think Costa will knock him out in this one. Rockhold's a great fighter, but I think he's just had his day, and his chin just ain't there. Actually, I say his chin's not there. Sometimes the guys just aren't taught to defend themselves correctly, and I think that's just what it is with Rockhold. He's also 37 now, and he's getting older, and reach wise, he does have a 5-inch reach on Costa, so that could be a very big thing. But I just don't. He has to fight smart. I just don't think with Rockhold, you just know he'll get clipped once, and once he gets clipped once, his chin is just taking too many. He got knocked out by Bisping, he got then knocked out by Romero, he's got knocked out by Blachowicz. He's been knocked out so many times that I just feel like, and it's not just any knockouts, he's been put out by these shots. And anything but, he's been knocked out by Blachowicz and Romero, two big hitters. So then you stick him in there with Paulo Costa, who I think will come in there with a bit of a point to prove he's lost his last 2 fights, so you don't want to be on a 3-fight skid. So I think he'll go in there and I think he'll really put it on him. And yeah, so for my prediction for this fight, I think that Paulo Costa will knock out Rockhold in the first round, I want to say. I think he'll pressure him with the body kicks. I think he'll get him up against the fence, and I think he'll land a bit of either a straight right or like a glancing right hand, and I think he'll drop him, and then he'll just be able to he'll finish him from there. He'll either get him on the ground and pound, or he'll keep the pressure, tie him up, land the knees, and then he'll just be over from there. So yeah, Rockhold, again, a great fighter in his day, and was a great, I won't say, it could have been an unbelievable champion for the UFC, but again, the ego just messed it up. But still a very good fighter, and he's still someone who I would like to see compete, even if he loses this one. I just think he needs to maybe stick to the grappling. Who knows? I mean, he could maybe implement a grappling approach in his fight, but I just don't, because Costa's not a terrible grappler, is the problem with that. And I just don't know if that will really work against Paulo Costa, but we'll see. But an interesting fight nonetheless, though. And then moving on to the into the main event, you got the welterweight clash between Kamaru Usman and Leon Edwards for the welterweight belt, the rematch. If I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure Leon Edwards was Usman's first opponent after he won the Ultimate Fighter. I might be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure that was it. He obviously beat Hayder Hassan in the Tough 21 finale, yeah, and I'm pretty sure it was Leon Edwards was his first opponent after that. And I watched that fight, and I thought, in that fight, if you look at Usman then compared to now, he was so wrestle heavy in that fight. He literally was diving at Edwards' legs, couldn't, not for 1 minute, try to do anything on the feet. And when he was on the feet, Edwards was lighting up a bit. But he got him down, and Usman, again, even at that point, showed he had that championship caliber of just seeing the fight out and showing. He's shown why now he's still the champion. I mean, I think Kamaru Usman is the only fighter, I feel, of this generation of fighters who will be. I mean, look, maybe Adesanya and Ngannou and people like that could do something, but I feel like Usman will be. He's the only guy who I feel like I put on par with some of the legends of the past, like a GSP, Anderson Silva, because I think he ties Anderson Silva's streak. I don't know if he's. I can't remember if it's a title defense streak or what it was, but he ties something with Anderson Silva. Should he beat Edwards here, and an amazing fighter. My personal today, he's my current favourite fighter in mixed martial arts. He's, I think, an amazing fighter. I think the way he's developed throughout the years, he went from being a guy who would just get up against the cage, just suffocate you, and get the takedowns, and he's now developed, I think, into a more well-rounded martial arts. I think the only thing he's missing really is maybe the submissions with the jiu-jitsu, but who knows, maybe that might come in this fight. But yeah, I think Usman is, to me, by a distance, the pound-for-pound best fighter in the world today. Volkanovski's there, but I still feel Usman's body of work is a bit more impressive, and the way he's developed and the way he dominated Woolley, then beating Covington in the war, then just shutting Masvidal out, then coming back from the adversity against Burns, getting hurt, and then sort of just showing that, putting that jab on him and eventually finishing him, then deading Masvidal in the second fight with that right hand. And then again, with the Colby Covington fight, showing how much his striking has come on. Yeah, I just think Usman's the best there is at the moment. But not an easy fight. I think Leon Edwards is massively underappreciated. And I think most people will agree with this, because he's a guy that people don't really talk about because he doesn't make the most noise. Maybe because he's also from England. I don't know what it is. But he doesn't really get the love. But he is extremely well-rounded. I think maybe after Usman, he may actually be the most well-rounded fighter in the welterweight division, because his striking is fantastic, his boxing is really good, but his takedown game is very good. The only issue I have with him is he stands very straight on, so he's very susceptible to a calf kick. And I think it was the RDA fight where he got dropped with that. But you saw that in the Nate fight. I think the Nate Diaz fight kind of showed. I know he got clipped in the 5th round, but I do think that Nate Diaz fight kind of shown people that, with Leon, he's got such a well-rounded game. He tripped Nate in various moments. He clipped him with right hands, with elbows. He has such a well-rounded game as a martial artist, and I think it's going to be interesting to see how he matches up this time against Usman, because these two have come on leaps and bounds. These two are much better than what they were so many years ago. So, you got to think of 2015 when they fought, December of 2015. Now they're fighting in 2022, so it is a long time since then, 7 years to be exact. So I feel like this will be a real test for both of these guys. For Leon Edwards, I think his best bet of trying to win this is, I think, he's making it into a technical battle rather than a slugfest. I still think he's better striker than Usman, but I think Usman's just a bit more powerful. And even if you look at them, Leon Edwards is actually really big, height-wise. I never realised how big he actually was, but then put him against Usman. Usman's physically just a bigger man. That he'll manhandle you. And I think Edwards, that's sort of the thing. He's more longer, more leaner. He's more of a guy who can keep you on the end of a jab but will never really finish you. And I think could be an issue for him in this fight. Because if he does hurt Usman, that's the thing. Could he outstrike him for 5 rounds and just light him up? Possibly, but it would be hard against a guy like Usman. And I think with Edwards as well, one thing about him is he did such a great job in that Nate Diaz fight, but for that 1 second he took his eye off the ball. Kamaru Usman never does that. He's on it for 5 rounds straight. You don't got to look at the Woodley fight to see that. Look at the Covington fight. Look at the Masvidal fight. Like, he does this every fight where he's always so switched on. He may make a mistake at times, like every fight he does, but he's never doesn't take his eye off the ball like how Leon did, and I think that could be an issue in this fight. But yeah, I feel for Leon though. I think he's a great fighter, but I just think in this fight he's kind of outmatched with the wrestling, and it's an issue that a lot of English fighters come over because we don't have the education on wrestling that American fighters do. And obviously Usman's Nigerian, but obviously had his education in America and is an amazing wrestler. And I think he hasn't shown that in the last few fights, because I think against Colby it was a bit more of a slugging fest because they were both wrestlers. Against Masvidal, he wanted to prove a point and knock him out, and then against Gilbert Burns, because of his jiu-jitsu, he didn't really try and mess with the wrestling. So I think in this fight Usman will and should go back to the wrestling, and I think that will be something that will be big for him. I think following Edwards, like I said, if you can just keep him at the end of your jab, do a little bit like what I said about Jose Aldo, and just keep him at range. His legs aren't really that muscular, Usman. I think it's just how he is. So just keep landing those calf kicks, the leg kicks, and I think you keep him at the end of that. If you can just light him up, beat the technical one is what I'm saying. Don't try and go to war with him. Don't try and make it a mano v mano type fight. Just be technical. He was the more technical fighter, and I think, just like I said, keep him at the end of the jab, use the elbows. The clinch game is very good. His elbows and the clinch are fantastic. So I think that could be something where maybe you could catch Usman there with something. But yeah, I think if you're Edwards, you want to be smart in this fight. And for Usman, I think his best bet, like I said, is to wrestle in this fight. Mainly because his striking has come on to such a point that he could just keep spamming takedowns and eventually hit someone or fake someone with the right hand, and he will knock him out because his striking has come on so much. People are almost surprised how much his striking has got better, like how powerful he is now. People like to put it down to steroids and stuff like this, but I think Usman's always had that power. I think if you look at the size of him, his shoulders, his arms, he's a big guy. So I always thought if a guy like that hits you, you're going to feel it. And I think what's happened is he's just been more refined now with Trevor Whitman. He's taught him to be a bit more technical. You see how he throws the jab now, how he throws right hands. He's just a bit more cleaner. His technique is just better, and I think that's the difference, really. And look at the Masvidal knockout. The way he sort of threw almost like a flicker jab at Masvidal, then dragged his hand down and came over with the straight right. It was perfect technique, all of it. Nothing was like anger or emotion or sloppy. It was just all straight, and I think that's what you need. And yeah, I think for Usman, if you can just keep the grappling and then mix up with the striking, his striking is good. Let's not get twisted. His jab is very good. His kicks are good. That little team kick that he throws to the body is good. And I think, like I said, if you can just... Usman's a very smart fighter, so I think if you can just... Maybe this fight, start investing in the legs. He throws a few leg kicks here and there, but nothing major. So I think, yeah. And I think... correct me if I'm wrong. I think they're... height and reach-wise, yeah, Leon's bigger, but only just, and Usman's got a 2-inch reach advantage, which is shocking to me because Edwards is very long, and I think with that reach advantage you can pop that jab out, and I don't think Edwards is going to counter with anything lethal. So again, use what you know. Like Trevor Whitman said, he's a champion because of his jab. Keep the jab on him, keep him at bay. You know, when Edwards is starting to maybe try and get you in the clinch, land a throw, you just, you know, pop out the double jab, just keep him off you, and then maybe you can then fake the jab, go for the takedown, mix it up with Hamza Kamaru Usman, mixing the wrestling and the striking. He's been one-dimensional in the first fight with Leon, and then he kind of switched up in his last few and been more strike heavy. So I think now I'll just mix it up a bit more. And yeah, when it comes to my prediction for this fight, I think it's an amazing fight. I think Leon Edwards is a brilliant fighter and a brilliant contender. And I think any other man out there, and he would have been champion any other time, because I think he could beat Colby. I do. I just think Usman's just a horrible fight for him. And what I think will happen, I think Usman will do what I'm saying. I think he will wrestle. He said in the press conference, let's wrestle. He was joking, obviously. He threw it in a sarcastic way, but I do genuinely think he will wrestle with him. I think he'll try and land the ground and pound. And I think what he'll do, he will put that feel of wrestling in Leon Edwards' head. And the shot that Nate Diaz landed on Leon Edwards was very, very similar to the one that Usman landed on Masvidal. What I think will happen is, in the later rounds, Usman will feint the takedown, Edwards will bite on it, and then Usman will land an overhand right. And I think he'll put Leon Edwards out. If not, he'll knock him down and finish him. So yeah, I'm going to go for a Kamaru Usman finish. I'm going to say in the 4th round of this one. And that makes it, what does it make it now? It would be, he had the 2 Masvidal fights, the 2 Colby fights, Burns. Be his 6th title defense now for Usman. He's cementing himself as one of the greats, and I do think he will get it done once again and further cement why I think he's making a hell of a claim for being the welterweight GOAT at this point. But again, Edwards is no joke, and to me it's win-win. I like both of these guys. Like I said, Usman is my favourite fighter in the UFC and MMA, but for me, I would love to see another British champion. So either way, 2 great fighters, and like I said, a fun card in general. The last card was horrendous, so I'm hoping that this one will be, horrendous on and off paper. I think, you know, the last one just wasn't that great, and I think this one's definitely got more excitement to it. And we're probably going to need that, because the next pay-per-view card after that, we then got obviously Cyril Gane and Tuivasa, which is a good one. We also got Whittaker and Vittori, which is another good fight. But next one after that is Chimaev and Nate Diaz, but that literally is the only fight worth covering from that card, because the rest is not that good. So yeah, but this card's great, and I think this one will deliver. It's a three great fights and a good card in general. So yeah, just my review for UFC, my preview for UFC 278. I will do a review after the fights, and yeah, until next time.